You're listening to Southern Fried Sports with Travis Reier on Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa.
TUG HD2 Northport and W265CG Tuscaloosa. A Town Square Media station.
One man to beat, you can forget about it. Touchdown, Alabama.
Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app. This is a Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa Sports Update.
With your Tide Sports Update, I'm Jacob Harrison. Two more Crimson Tide NFL rookies signed their first contracts Tuesday. Alex Leatherwood signed a $14.4 million deal with the Las Vegas Raiders, and Najee Harris signed a $13.1 million deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Alabama Crimson Tide baseball team began the SEC tournament with a bang, defeating South Carolina 9-3 Tuesday afternoon. Alabama scored 6 runs in the third inning, taking advantage of 4 wild pitches, 2 walks, and 3 hits, including a Jackson Tate 3-run home run to give Alabama the early momentum. Alabama will take on Tennessee today at 1 p.m. Oh, Canada. Alabama wide receiver John Mechie was recognized as Canada's most outstanding college football player Monday as the recipient of the John Cornish Trophy.
For more details on these stories and more, check out the Tide 100.9 website or download the free Tide 100.9 app. This is Southern Fried Sports with Bama Online senior analyst Travis Reier on your home for Alabama sports. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Make it through this year, I think I'm gonna put this bottle down. I guess as time goes on, I'll grow to miss it less than I will now. And I think I'm gonna tell her that I'm gonna go away for a while, till I can get this demon out.
It is 11 a.m.-ish on a Wednesday morning. Time once again for Southern Fried Sports right here on your home for University of Alabama Athletics. Tide 100.9, Tide 100.9 FM. Travis Reier, senior analyst for BamaOnline.com with you weekdays in this very time slot. We're here for roughly an hour, 11 a.m.-ish to noon. Monday through Friday, the show, as always, brought to you by Peterbrook Chocolatier out there at 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hills section of Tuscaloosa. Once again, the gelato. And this is going to come up more so in the month of July, because in the month of July, it is Gelato Wednesdays. You're going to get a free small cup of gelato on Wednesdays in the month of July there at Peterbrook Chocolatier. But always, every day, a good time to get by. Check out that assortment of flavors, a nice cool treat as the temperatures start to go up and up and up. Peterbrook Chocolatier, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North. Joined on the program by the executive producer of Southern Fried Sports, Jacob Harrison. And together, we combine to form the 60-minute band of sports talk radio. Jacob, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing all right. I think I need to hit up Amazon for a watch. I think it might be the 59-minute men today.
Yeah, I think I think people have finally caught on with Town Square, and they're trying to sort of condense the show to like 6 minutes total if they can do it. You know, I'm kind of feeling like the guy in the movie Office Space that they let go and they don't really tell him. They just keep moving him around to different areas of the building, but he keeps that red stapler. He always has that red stapler with him. It's kind of what's going on maybe with Southern Fried Sports. Hey, we don't need a full hour. We can keep you entertained and informed for however long they give us here on the program. I'm happy this morning because I've started the day with an iced tea that has lime in it. And if you give me lime in just about any of my drinks, any of my beverages, I'm a happy dude. And that's especially the case when I go into restaurants these days. You go into restaurants, especially those that have full bar service, you order an iced tea and you kind of throw the curveball at them. They're expecting the lemon request and you go lime. And I've even had some of those establishments say, well, we don't have lime. I'm looking at a full bar. I'm looking at margaritas coming out 3 or 4 at a time, cocktails, maybe a Mick Ultra, maybe a Corona with a lime. You don't have lime for the tea? Yeah, I'm probably one of those reasons that the service industry is having a hard time right now, keeping people employed or at least attracting people to work. I'll tell you somebody who's really tough on the service industry personnel, and I love her to death, but Nana, you would think it would be Pops of that duo, but Nana is tough on these poor servers. She'll go into a barbecue restaurant. They'll come to take the drink order. She'll ask, well, do you have a hot tea? Hot tea? Hot tea at a barbecue restaurant? These are the type of requests she makes. And Pops just sort of looks at his hands, and we just proceed accordingly. We got a lot to get into on the program today. And as we outlined for you there at the top of the program, not a lot of time to get it done, but we're going to talk some SEC baseball tournament. Obviously, Alabama with a very impressive performance on day one of the 2021 SEC baseball tournament over in Hoover. The Crimson Tide thumps South Carolina yesterday afternoon, gets a solid performance, a scrappy type performance that you've grown accustomed to from Tyler Ross, who improves to 7-4 on the season. He goes 6 innings, allows 3 earned runs, only 1 walk. You like that. You love that. And 5 hits. And then Brock Guffey comes in, gives you a really nice performance in 3 innings of relief, allows just 2 hits, no runs, just 1 walk. And the Crimson Tide advances. Got production really throughout the lineup. Big game for Peyton Wilson, a couple doubles. Sam Prater didn't have a hit in the game, but he did have a couple of RBI. I thought the sort of defining moment there was in that 6-run third when it looked like Alabama might let South Carolina off the hook and just score 1 run. The starter for South Carolina, Weans, is a guy who set a SEC tournament wild pitch record in 2 2/3 innings. And it looked like Alabama was going to let him off the hook in the third, but Diodati comes up big with the 2-run bingo. And then you kind of rolled from there. Turned a tight game into a 6-0 game after 2.5 innings. So very strong performance, and now you move on. Survive and advance right now for Alabama baseball. And it's the Tennessee Vols who are up next this afternoon. Right now in Hoover, you've got Florida and Mississippi State. At last check in the top of the 5th, Florida hammering Mississippi State. 2 top 15 teams over there at the Hoover Met. So that game, more importantly to you if you're an Alabama fan or a Tennessee fan, that game is not going to go to extra innings, and it doesn't look as if weather's going to be an issue. That's all you care about if you're in that next up spot, or you're in the 3rd spot or the 4th spot today. You don't want any rain. You don't want any extra inning games. Didn't have any of that yesterday. Looks like you might get through the first game today without that being an issue. And Tennessee, man, Tennessee's suddenly a baseball school. I guess you have to take what you can get at this point. If you're Tennessee, right? You're not excited about football season. That's going to be the biggest heartbreak of it all for Tennessee fans. The softball team last weekend went 2-0 in its home park in regional play. And so now it's pretty much Tennessee baseball that Big Orange Nation is clinging to. Because once this is over for the Tennessee Vol baseball team, probably not going to be as amped up about the upcoming college football season. Although Brad Crawford, we talked about it with Brent Beard yesterday. Brad Crawford, right now, projecting Josh Heupel's first Tennessee team to reach bowl play, a Liberty Bowl projection for the Tennessee Vols. So we'll see. I'm not as optimistic, I guess, for the Vols as maybe some other folks are, but Tennessee fans are fired up. Tony Vitello, he's done a heck of a job up there. They've got to make some commitments facilities-wise, though. Lindsey Nelson Stadium up there, it's not exactly among the elite in the league. We're also going to talk about second favorite SEC championships. Second, also in terms of rotational championships in the SEC as far as venues go, and permanent venues for SEC championships. Jacob Harrison, if I were to ask you right now, which I'm going to do, by the way, your second favorite SEC championship, your second favorite championship event where the Southeastern Conference is concerned, that's just going ahead and putting out there that you're going to say you're going to have football at the top of the list, like 95% of us. So second favorite, maybe more, maybe not quite 95%, because a lot of folks do love the college basketball. What would be your second favorite, Jacob?
That's kind of difficult. I do, yes.
Such
of
a
course.
football guy.
I am such a football guy. But I have thoroughly enjoyed this year where I have invested more time into other sports, and I very much enjoyed the basketball tournament, very much enjoyed the softball tournament. But if I had to say one, then I guess it'll be basketball, since I paid attention to games outside of Alabama.
Yeah, I think Alabama fans have enjoyed a lot of the SEC championships, right? I mean, you go back to December, Alabama wins the football SEC title. You get into the new year, Alabama men's hoops wins the men's basketball tournament title. Gymnastics wins the SEC title. Softball, here in the last couple of weeks, playing in Tuscaloosa, wins the SEC softball title. So, yeah, I think Alabama fans kind of like them all. Kind of like them all right now. I would say for me, I love softball. I mean, it's well documented here on the program. I love it. The thing I don't know if I necessarily like as much about the way the SEC does it, and this sort of ties into that other topic we touched on, rotational venues and locations versus permanent venues. And I'm not a neutral site guy when it comes to the regular season. I don't like the season opening the season opening what is it? The neutrals. I don't like those. I'm not a big fan of those. I like home and away. I like on-campus settings for those, especially to start the season. But I dig it, I think, when it comes to championships. You know, I think the SEC softball tournament, if we're just talking fan passion and how it's received, I think Tuscaloosa would be a great permanent spot for it, but I don't think you're going to see that happen. Maybe places like Columbus, Georgia. I know people would laugh at this, but over in Oxford, they got this Chocolaco Park now. I believe that's how you pronounce that. And I mean, they spent a ton of money on that. They spent $35 million for that facility in total over in Oxford. And it opened in 2016. Now, you'd have to adjust it in a way, I think, to get capacity. And I don't think people are going to look at, in all due respect to Anniston, Oxford. I love the Longhorn right there off the exit, you know, there in Oxford. That's a good Longhorn right there. But I don't see the SEC saying, yeah, let's go to Oxford, Anniston, Oxford for one of our championships on a permanent basis. Maybe Columbus, Georgia. I know we've seen the baseball tournament there years and years ago, back in it was like the mid to late 90s. The Chocolate Lady and I actually went to that SEC baseball tournament for a couple of days. I know, right? Real exciting guy. In Columbus, Georgia. And then it pretty much just settled there in Hoover. So rotational versus permanent venues, you're going to see it in men's basketball coming up here. The SEC men's basketball tournament going to Tampa next year, but then settling in for at least an 8-year run in Nashville, which if you ask me, and I think if you asked a lot of people, and we'll ask Cecil Hurt coming up here in just a few minutes, should they just put it in Nashville and leave it alone? I think a lot of people would say absolutely. Just seems to be the perfect spot. Proximity to fan bases is pretty good. But just the town and kind of how it's how it's taken in there, right there in downtown Nashville. It seems to really work there. You've got the women's basketball tournament for the SEC in Greenville. So you've got a little bit of a mix between football, men's basketball, women's basketball. You see the gymnastics championship move around. Some of the other sports do the same in the Southeastern Conference, but kind of flies in the face of my preference in the regular season where neutral sites are concerned, that I think I like the permanent venues. You know, like I think about Major League Baseball and the NBA, and I think they've got it right with you go the entire season and you play for the right for home field advantage throughout the postseason. But did it really bother you last summer that Major League Baseball, or into the fall, I guess, certainly with Major League Baseball, did it really bother you that Major League Baseball pretty much did it all in neutral sites, a couple of neutral sites through the World Series? It didn't really bother me that MLB did that. Kind of the same thing for the NBA playoffs. The bubble didn't bother me. You know, as far as how that played out, I watched it just as much or just as little as I would have otherwise as a television viewer. It certainly didn't impact me that way. So those are some topics we'll get into with Cecil Hurt coming up in just a little bit. Maybe also some underappreciated Alabama football players for the 2021 season. Guys that maybe aren't as much on your radar that should be. If we don't get as much into that, we'll carry that over to tomorrow. The Atlanta Braves stay hot. You see that? Get a win up in Boston last night. Charlie Morton, 9 strikeouts. Pablo Sandoval, 3 hits back in Boston. And there sit the Braves now at 500 on the season. Just one back of the NL East leading New York Metropolitans. Going to step aside for our first break. When we come back, as promised, Cecil Hurt of the Tuscaloosa News and Tidesports.com. He'll join us when Southern Fried Sports returns on Tide 100.9 FM right after this.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
The sky partially sunny this afternoon. Just a small chance of any one spot getting a shower through the evening hours. The high today 91, tonight's low 68. Tomorrow, mostly sunny during the morning. A few isolated afternoon showers are possible. The high at 90. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 83 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
Tide 100.9. For more coverage of Alabama football, visit us at Tide100.9.com or download the free Tide 100.9 app.
The Crimson Tide will not be denied.
News out of Atlanta, as we have now learned, that the Chick-fil-A kickoff games, of course, Alabama part of that equation, taking on Miami on September the 4th at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, full capacity now. It's official. Each and every seat available for Alabama and Miami. So there you go. Speaking of full capacity, it pretty much was at Legacy Arena a couple years ago when I saw that lady and her iconic band Fleetwood Mac. Weren't many empty seats at Legacy, I don't think, that night. It's a huge birthday day in the music business. Stevie Nicks, the late Levon Helm, Lauryn Hill, Hank Williams Jr., Miles Davis, Cecil Hurt. Pick a genre, and it's pretty much a icon's birthday in the music world today.
Seems like it is. Hank Jr. That's the name. You don't see a lot of Hank Jr. anymore, but he's out there. He'll probably be doing a summertime tour when he gets everything set up. So, but yeah, Stevie Nicks.
What's the Cecil Hurt
when they
power
were the Buckingham
rankings?
Knicks, Birmingham saved them. Basically.
Yeah. Back in the day, right?
Yeah, back when the DJ could make play the record enough. There was a real live DJ and a real live record player, and you could get the big opportunity for your band to go over, and so I think it was Lindsay who said, they came to a crossroads where they were just going to have to play Birmingham forever, or make it in California. So. Long association with Birmingham and Fleetwood Mac, and the precursor to Fleetwood Mac, 2.0, 3.0, with Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks. Fleetwood Mac was a blues, one of those British blues bands. Before that, Peter Green on guitar. So they figured something out. What a formula.
They most certainly did. There is no doubt about that. Speaking of formulas, it's just one game, but we've seen Alabama baseball teams go on runs in Hoover in the past, and to do that, you got to win the first one, Cecil. And
sure.
Nice start for Alabama yesterday in the win over South Carolina.
Yeah, I think South Carolina probably, didn't go with their number one in that elimination game, and they're in the NCAA, so I get that. But so they gave up a 6-run third inning, and in Hoover, that's enough. That's enough. Ball seemed to be carrying okay by Hoover standards yesterday, but sending Ross out there with a 6-run lead after the third. It's a big win for him, though. Put him in that double elimination, which is really important because that creates a lot of opportunities for more big wins right here down the stretch.
A team that definitely needs them, yeah.
The bubble stretch. Yeah, I can't tell you if they're in or out because I don't keep up with every tournament and don't know yet who the bid stealers are going to be and so forth. But I think they win a couple. I think Tennessee's a big game for them, and stay in that double elimination and keep moving and rack up the RPI wins, and they may get a 3 seed somewhere. But I think if they can do that, they've got a shot.
I guess Cecil, understanding still at least 2 more games for this team to play, and who knows what could happen here in the next 4 or 5 days. But you looked at where the program was under Brad Bohannon going into the season, and we talked about this a few months ago. Make it to Hoover, and then if you get to Hoover and win a couple of games, that's pretty solid performance. That's understanding the final 3 weekends of the regular season weren't what Alabama certainly would have hoped for, but very, 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 very challenging stretch, very challenging league. Making a regional is where this team wants to be. There's no question about that. But if it comes up a little bit short, would you say this is still a team and a program under Brad Bohannon that's trending in the right direction?
I think so. First of all, you've got to look. They've got a first rounder, a potential, who knows, number 1 overall. Mm-hmm. It's going to be the Friday night starter in Brad Bohannon's mind. And couldn't get it going. Just couldn't get over the injuries, or the injury, I suppose. Dr. Kane's going to do Tommy John surgery. So and wish Connor well, and don't begrudge him that decision at all. But that's a lot of scholarship money tied up in a game that, if you can't come back next year, he'll have been on the roster for 3 years and thrown 28 innings.
And you're right. That makes it tough with the limited numbers when it comes to the financial aid that baseball programs have got available to them, and a lot of times it's chunks of that do go to guys that pitch.
Sure, as they should, but I'm not going to ride down that Ron Polk highway. But this is where it makes a difference, and I'm not going to say Vandy could lose a David Price or a number one overall guy like that and have the very same guy, but it's almost the Nick Saban. They got a lot more dudes to choose from down there, and Vandy's what Vandy's doing is within the rules as they are constituted. So good for them. LSU's done it in the past. Alabama does it, and football or basketball or baseball to the degree that they can, but they just don't have those financial aid scholarships available to them. And the guy who I certainly don't know what Connor's terms were, but he may have been on full for all I know.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me. And so it's tough. It's tough. So to answer your question, and I'm not saying, it's the injuries or it's this or that. I think they've played gradually better every year against under Brad, and making Hoover was probably the next step. If they can flip into a regional, that's a positive as well. I don't think Greg Burns looking at making any changes in baseball, that's for sure.
No. Cecil, we tend to have this conversation on an annual basis, it seems like, when the SEC baseball tournament rolls around, because it is essentially a permanent site. It's become now with Hoover and all the success that that the event has had there and the league has had with it there, almost like a 1B in some ways to Omaha in terms of how it's anticipated and how it's attended. We had the discussion earlier. You get past the football championship, and I think what men's basketball looks to be doing, maybe even more and more, and certainly looking at the next 8 years after this next year, Nashville becoming to men's basketball, I guess, what Atlanta has become to the football championship.
Right, and Hoover to the baseball. So.
Right.
So yeah, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I'm sure they'd love to host it in Memphis, or I don't think Jackson. I'm not sure that Jackson would host it, but they could. But Memphis, it's in downtown Park. Who knows where parking is, and so forth. So, Hoover, they've got the drill worked out. The RVs go here. The fans go there. It's centrally located. So I don't know that it's going to move anytime soon.
Talking with Cecil Hurt of the Tuscaloosa News and TideSports.com. Yeah, I mean, you think about some of the other sports in the Southeastern Conference. Most recently, the softball championship contested in Tuscaloosa at Rhodes Stadium. I kind of got to thinking about that event because it is gained in popularity year after year. It's a single elimination format, so it's sort of condensed. I don't necessarily mind that, to be honest with you. Kind of get it in, get it done, and get your focus to regional play and beyond. But understanding that there's likely no chance of the SEC being okay with, say, Tuscaloosa hosting it on an annual basis. Some of the other events that rotate, when it comes to those, would you prefer to see rotational or permanent, or are you okay with this sort of mix that we see?
Does Georgia host the tennis every year? They certainly have the facility for it.
In tennis?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Florida won the national championship, but Georgia
in the men's,
has the facilities to do it. So, yeah, that would. If you told me they were going to play it in Athens every year, I wouldn't squawk about that. Alabama has. Everybody looks for some disadvantage, but Alabama has advantages too, and football wise, so forth. Now, at some point, sooner or later in history, Georgia's going to beat Alabama in that SEC championship game, and everybody's going to raise heck. Well, they get a home game every year. They get Atlanta every year. So when that time comes, you'll hear a lot of it. As long as Alabama's winning, you don't hear too much.
Kind of reminiscent of Georgia, Florida, in Jacksonville, and kind of how that was going, especially with Spurrier at Florida, and the way the Gators dominated that stretch. You heard a lot from Georgia fans in that time frame. You didn't hear as much from them though when Dooley was sort of having his way with the Gators during his time in Athens.
Right, Alabama, Auburn, when Coach Bryant was dominating in Legion Field, you heard a good bit of that. So that rivalry was different at 50-50, and it was a lot of fun and so forth. I don't know. I rode by going to an appointment yesterday. The Legacy Arena, the football stadium, and everything. That stuff. They seem to have done just riding by. They seem to have done a nice job. Now I don't know. Get down in there. How the parking is relative to the attendance. I think it'll be very good for what UAB needs. Very good for what one of the ESPN bowl games in Birmingham needs. Don't know what they'll do with it necessarily the rest of the year. I hope they don't let it go to seed like Legion Field. But it certainly looks good right now.
It is a really good look there off the expressway, and sort of ties in with that Top Golf and the hotels right there. And as you said, the Reno to Legacy Arena has an opportunity to be a really nice setup right there in downtown Birmingham. Cecil, obviously it's the time of year you start to get your full roster, or what you anticipate your full roster for an upcoming season being for football, but also men's basketball. As we know, it's with Nate Oates going into year 3 and J.D. Davison, Charles Bediako, the transfers, Jason Holt, those guys hitting campus. There's an anticipation that, frankly, we haven't seen on a semi-annual basis with that program. But football, it's kind of become a thing as long as we can remember. When you look at the additions that Alabama has made and kind of where this team sits going into the summer and then into fall camp, what are some of the areas where you could envision some of these new guys in football helping out? Then we'll get into some hoops as well.
Well, I think To'oTo'o is going to help out. I think they had a good linebacking core anyway, but you make an addition like that and, potential first rounder. So that's going to be pair him and Christian Harris, and that's going to be a pretty formidable duo. Freshman, obviously Hall in the spring, looked like he was going to make a contribution. The one thing I'll say is football or basketball, hey, they may not be done. Who knows? Primo may go pro.
Yep.
Somebody else may go in the portal, and they may not be done. Nick Saban, there's yet another 5-star defensive lineman out in Seattle. They may not be done. So I don't think that'll be a sign and announce situation. I think it'll just be a hey, look who enrolled situation. But and that would certainly help. So the running back competition is going to be fascinating. The secondary, I think everybody loves Kool-Aid, and I think he can help. So it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see. This year's team is now going to be compared to last year's team, and that's going to be a tough comparison to live up to.
We saw and read about the, I guess, somewhat of a vetting of TJ Finley, the LSU transfer who ultimately landed at Auburn. You look at Alabama's quarterback situation with 3 scholarship guys. Is 3 the new 4 in today's world where scholarship quarterbacks are concerned, Cecil? Or do you think there's always going to be interest from coaches to try to keep that number to 4 as best they can?
As best they can, but it's tough. Hang on to that 4th guy. You don't sign a guy who you don't think will help you. Well, if Alabama signs a guy that they think will help them, that's a 4 or 5-star guy. So Ty Simpson next year won't be a 4 or 5-star guy, and I think he's willing to wait Bryce Young's 3rd year, and so who knows? Who knows? I think it's very hard at Alabama's level to sign 4 and hold on to all 4 of them.
With as much as we know about these guys coming out of high school now and social media and the viral nature that it takes on in the recruiting process with the 5 stars, I guess you could say, that are out there. When you look at Alabama athletics in general, as far as newcomers, is J.D. Davison the biggest star potentially that's going to hit campus at the University of Alabama this summer and going into the fall?
Could be. Could be. Again, those are kind of difficult evaluations.
In terms, though, of what we know about a guy or the anticipation for a guy, where would he be?
He's ultra athletic, ultra explosive. Going to go in the lottery, I would think, barring any complications. So I think people are excited about that, and I think he can live up to it.
Well, Cecil, as always, you live up to it here on the program, and we appreciate the time and can continue to look forward to your coverage and thoughts on University of Alabama athletics, and always love having you here on the show. Thanks, Cecil.
Thanks, Trav. Appreciate it.
There you go, Cecil Hurt, longtime, iconic columnist, sports editor for Tuscaloosa News and TheTideSports.com. We're going to head to a break. When we come back, more of a Wednesday edition of Southern Fried Sports right here on Tide 100.9 FM right after this.
You're listening to Southern Fried Sports with BamaOnline.com senior analyst Travis Reier on your home for Alabama sports. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
The legendary Miles Davis and some xylophone to boot. Yeah, sign us up here on Southern Fried Sports. It's a Wednesday edition of the program. Thanks again to Cecil Hurt of the Tuscaloosa News and TideSports.com joining us on a Wednesday. Did you see we've got another Phil Mickelson and Tom Brady pairing on the golf course? The duo now going to take on Aaron Rodgers and Bryson DeChambeau. Maybe that's what Brooks was salty about. That now viral video from the interviews there at Kiowa Island over the weekend, Brooks expressing his disdain for Bryson DeChambeau. Maybe Brooks already knew about it. He's a little jelly, you know? Maybe Brooks is a little salty about not being asked to team up with Aaron Rodgers to take on Tom Brady and Phil Mickelson. The match returns on July the 6th. So that's kind of filling in your July sports calendar for you. As you get post 4th of July, you're going to have Tom Brady, Phil Mickelson taking on DeChambeau and Aaron Rodgers. And then, of course, you're going to have July the 24th. The one I'm looking forward to, maybe the one sports event I'm most looking forward to before the start of football season. More than the NBA playoffs, which are ongoing. More than that sort of grind through the dog days of Major League Baseball, the All-Star game, I guess, there in July. That's a July event on the sports calendar. I'm looking forward to Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury 3. Does Deontay have anything for the Gypsy King in round 3 of that trilogy? Regardless, Deontay's getting paid. That's what matters the most. But Deontay's got something to prove, no doubt about it. It was pretty well taken apart by Tyson Fury in that second fight. So that's the one I have circled between now and really August, mid-August, late August, is Deontay and Fury. Tom Brady, though, with some smack on the Twitter this morning. Tom tweets, 2 old guys against the young bucks, Phil Mickelson. DeChambeau better get used to laying up because we know Aaron Rodgers isn't going for it. Whoa. Wow. Tom with a little silly season golf haymaker there for Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, by the way, he ain't worried about it because everything my social media timelines tell me is that Aaron is hanging out with the new girlfriend over in, it looks like Maui, I guess. He's not on Oahu. He's somewhere less inhibited than Oahu. He's somewhere more remote, it looks like. Aaron Rodgers is looking like Johnny Utah these days out there in Hawaii. You remember Johnny Utah, special agent there. Keanu Reeves, Point Break. Of course you do. Got after those presidents, the former presidents, bank robbers in Point Break. We're going to head to a final break. When we come back, more of a Wednesday edition of Southern Fried Sports right here on Tide 100.9 FM right after this.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
The sky partially sunny this afternoon. Just a small chance of any one spot getting a shower through the evening hours. The high today 91, tonight's low 68. Tomorrow, mostly sunny during the morning. A few isolated afternoon showers are possible. The high at 90. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 83 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
The flagship station for Alabama Crimson Tide football.
Alabama touchdown.
Only on Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Well, they blew up the Chicken Man in Philly last night. And they blew up his house too.
Tell him, Levon.
Down on the boardwalk, they're ready for a fight. Gonna see what them racket boys
can do. Levon Helm.
Now there's trouble busting in
this
out of state.
Music World birthday extravaganza today. Levon, he too born on this day, along with Stevie Nicks, Miles Davis, Lauryn Hill, and Hank Williams Jr. We didn't have enough breaks for everybody today, but we were definitely going to get Levon in. Didn't matter. It is a Wednesday edition of Southern Fried Sports right here on Tide 100.9 FM over in Birmingham, Hoover to be exact, with the SEC baseball tournament. Florida dropping a 13 bomb on the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Bottom of the seventh, Florida 13, Mississippi State 1. Yeah, I think you could probably institute, what do you think, a 10-run rule after 7 in the SEC baseball tournament? I think Mississippi State would be totally fine with that. Probably more so than even Florida. But for the sake of competitive balance, I guess, especially with pitching being what it is in college baseball, you got to make them play the 9. Mississippi State, I think, feels like they are set as far as one of those national seeds, top 8 national seeds. So I don't think we were going to see the best of the best from the Bulldogs in Hoover. Again, that game in the bottom of the 7th, so you're in really good shape to be on time for that 1 Central anticipated first pitch between the Alabama Crimson Tide and the Tennessee Vols. In fact, Alabama, its Twitter account for baseball anyway, has already posted the starting 9 for today's matchup with the Vols. You're going to have Jacob McNary on the bump to start things for Alabama this afternoon. So probably a lot of bullpen. Didn't have to burn much yesterday. Brock Guffey did a nice job there, keeping that pen preserved for you. 3 scoreless in support of Tyler Ross. But Jacob McNary gets the ball against the Vols this afternoon. No real changes that I can detect here to the batting lineup. Pretty much the usual cast of characters. Unfortunately for Alabama baseball, the big news today, E1 Baseball reporting earlier that, as Cecil Hurt touched on as well, Connor Prelip, Crimson Tide's Friday night starter, Tommy John surgery coming up on Thursday, and he will miss the entire 2022 season. That's tough, as Cecil talked about, when you got those tight scholarship numbers. So Prelip set to undergo Tommy John surgery. That's going to do it for a Wednesday edition of Southern Fried Sports. Thanks again to Cecil Hurt. Thanks to Jacob Harrison. Thanks to you as well. The lunch whistle on this Wednesday, Southern Ale House, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hill section of Tuscaloosa. Eat Southern, drink Southern, be Southern. Southern Ale House, great lunch, great happy hour, great dinner options for you. Some personal favorites. Well, you're not going to go wrong with any of the burgers. And if you like live entertainment, by the way, Thursday nights starting at 6, you got live music on that outstanding deck area there at Southern Ale House. So you're not going to go wrong with Southern Ale House, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North. Until 11 a.m. on Thursday, have a great rest of your Wednesday, everybody.
Thank you for